From distinct work on the microphone to still leading the charge after 2 decades in the business, these stars are the unquestionable number one at more than one thing. Fancy that. I'm Gareth from What Culture Wrestling, and here are 10 wrestlers who are the best in the world at exactly 2 things. Number 10, Ronda Rousey roping in the casuals and legitimacy. Among the many parts of WWE's machine to falter during the deeply frustrating Thunderdome era of the recent product was a women's division, Bayley and Sasha Banks aside, that had been on something of a roll throughout 2019 heading into the early part of 2020. And while the steam being lost hot on the heels of WrestleMania 36 can also likely be attributed to the long-term absences of the likes of Becky Lynch and Charlotte Flair, there's no questioning the fact that many a casual eye still refuse to return to the company due to its severe lack of Ronda Rousey in the time following the prior year's show of shows. Rousey is a bona fide crossover star, and her presence in the division since this year's Royal Rumble alone has already nudged the ladies back into a prominent spot on Friday nights. Adding to that a level of legitimacy unmatched by just about anyone in wrestling today, taking arms and believably woman-handling her co-workers. And it's not hard to see why Vinnie Mac was more than happy to pass the baddest woman on the planet the ball once again upon her long-awaited return. Number 9, Becky Lynch working off-duty and creating big match feels. Perhaps the biggest element of the Becky Lynch character that fans didn't realize they needed until it was gone was the man's penchant for simply refusing to sign off from working long after she'd exited whatever building she'd popped that night. Lynch's social media game in particular had been one of the strongest in the business throughout her first run at the top in the lead up to Mania 35. But even after that, few could touch the last kicker outside of the ring when it came to epic one-liners, building up interest in her upcoming matches, or just ripping into her colleagues. The mom teased us back into her epic trolling with many a hint at her return towards the end of 2020 and well into 2021, but has taken things up another notch since her SummerSlam comeback, evidenced in her insanely committed promo post getting her voice box crushed by Bianca Belair at a house show recently. This social media acumen and ability to hype up incoming bouts with everyone from Doudrop to Liv Morgan as something worthy of your time also highlights how Lynch sits head and shoulders above the rest when it comes to making her matches feel can't miss too. Number 8, Ricochet, innovation and eating sugar honey iced tea. Contrary to what WWE regularly presents you with, Ricochet sits as one of the most jaw-dropping and game-changing talents of his generation, making the out-of-this-world seem frankly routine. Even something as intricate as a shooting star press is made to feel like an effortless exercise by the one and only. But it's in his ability to epically rip up the rulebook when it comes to forging unforgettable spots that makes Slick Rick the most dynamic in-ring innovator of his time. Double moonsaults off cages, frightening 630 splashes, flipping out of many a maneuver and landing on his feet like a goddamn superhero. Nothing is off limits when it comes to the imaginative work of the former Prince Puma. Yet perhaps his most overlooked element to his all-round game that goes unmatched by just about anyone else in the world is the diminutive sensation's ability to take a significant move like he's literally been hit by a freight train. See being claymored out of midair by Drew McIntyre for an example of this world-class sugar honey iced tea eating talent. Number 7, Keith Lee, high-flying big man and memeable moments. Sure enough, from the second Keith Lee arrived on All Elite shores earlier this year, the former NXT and North American champion quickly set about reminding fans just why Triple H and his pals invested so much in the absurdly athletic big man. Combining insane leapfrogs with absurd slingshot springboards, Lee gives the term agile big man unquestionable new meaning, and looks to be recapturing the form and grace that once made him the best in class in his chosen style. Away from being a boulder that gravity forgot though, Lee is also perhaps the most consistent meme-making machine the wrestling world has to offer, rarely forcing moments that instantly make their way into the Twitter sphere. His epic slow rise up behind an unassuming victim, fondness for bulldozing talent into the 6th row, and inhuman talent for launching wrestlers into next week have all become instantly iconic in-match beats. Number 6, CM Punk, modern-day babyfacing and selling. A decent portion of the wrestling world was understandably left wondering whether a returning CM Punk would be able to go in quite the same way he once did. But over the course of a truly mesmerizing first 6 months back in the wrestling landscape, the best in the world has undoubtedly proven that he is just that when it comes to being a babyface the modern audience can genuinely get behind. Showcasing flaws and vulnerability like honorable scars that make him the man he is today, one who is just trying to be better, damn it. Even a certain Hangman has struggled to come close to the chick magnet in terms of generating legitimate sympathy and support since his comeback at the first dance. And again, showcasing that class is simply permanent. Punk's supreme selling of his ring rust earlier on in his AEW run, and in the midst of manhandlings from Wardlow in particular, act as pointed reminders that absolutely nobody can touch a Punk enjoying what he does best. Number 5, Randy Orton, babyface hot tag and the heel turn. WWE's resident Viper catches a not entirely unearned amount of flack for sometimes being known to phone it in. But any signs of that frustrating trait have been nowhere to be seen ever since joining forces with the original bro. Randy Orton has quite simply been a revelation as of late, exploding the live crowd time and time again during RK Bros matches everywhere from Saudi Arabia to Cleveland. In all honesty, you'd be hard-pressed to find a finer hot tag on show in just about any other company on the planet right now, with a blistering legend killer clearly having the time of his life igniting a usually drab Raw with RKOs aplenty. But with this joyous stoner bro period also comes with it the knowledge that at some point very soon, Orton will most likely pull the trigger on yet another diabolical turn. Seen in his devilish cashing in on Daniel Bryan and aligning with the Authority and massacring of many a legend, nobody can hold a candle to this 2-decade veteran when tasked with sticking the knife into a face's back. Riddle be warned. Number 4, Jon Moxley, authenticity and TV violence. In the darkest of times, an AEW World title holding Jon Moxley acted as a glimmer of hope for those trapped inside their homes. It was during this time when many would have stumbled that Mox found a way to resonate even more than ever before. How in the hell was that possible? Perfecting the tried and tested turning himself up to 11 trick and bringing the sort of authentic badass not seen since the days of a Texas rattlesnake elsewhere back into our lives. And in the wake of a brave public battle with alcohol abuse, the purveyor of violence has picked straight back up where he left off, in being unquestionably the most BS-less entity currently occupying the wrestling world. That authenticity is only heightened by a mastery of small screen violence too, with Mox making an art form out of forcing you to believe he and his rival are going to all-out war whenever the stage, scene or event demands it. Number 3, Bryan Danielson, making you feel everything and not pandering. While current sparring partner Mox can hold the honor of being the current master of making you believe in the severity of a match, the American Dragon tops the class when it comes to compelling you to genuinely feel the anguish you're seeing both the former WWE champion and his rival endure. Bryan Danielson relishes absolutely every piece of offense he throws his adversary's way, and allows time for those watching on to viscerally experience the anguish as he goes. This also extends to his own eating of moves too, as his past history of concussion-related issues provoke winces out of the paying public upon each and every neck bump the now AEW All-Star takes. It's during this period that the former Daniel Bryan has also been allowed to flex another once dormant strength, that being his mesmerizing ability to simply present himself as an all-round body-breaking nightmare. He doesn't care whether you see him as a face or a heel. It doesn't matter who or what scenario is placed in front of him, he won't adapt his presentation in the slightest to play to the crowd, because his masterful and menacing work in between the ropes and on the mic means he simply does not need to. Number 2, Sami Zayn, working in the WWE system and heel comedy. There'll always be a portion of the wrestling community that thirst to see the likes of Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens fully embrace their generico and steen displays of the past in between a set of WWE ropes. But the reality is that both of the former independent icons have been forced to adapt their styles, both inside and outside of the ring, in order to fit into Vinnie Mac's empire and prolong their runs as performers. Zayn in particular has unashamedly reveled in taking the attention away from almost killing himself every time he steps into a squared circle, in favor of leaning into the more character-driven work McMahon responds best to. And he acts as perhaps the greatest modern example of finding a way to fit into a system without necessarily surrendering the unique creativity that brought you to the dance in the first place. It's in Zayn's latest incarnation as a nutty conspiracy-obsessed pain in the ass that the one-time NXT champion has also cemented himself as the finest heel comedy character working today, forcing you to let loose a chuckle each and every week despite being presented, in the boss's mind at least, as the sort of force you long to see get his comeuppance. Oh, and speaking of which, number 1, MJF, manipulating a crowd and comeuppance. Once again, shining a light on what can only be described as a seminal moment in All Elite history. Maxwell Jacob Freeman's 2 defining traits both unequivocally played a part in establishing his and CM Punk's recent feud as an all-timer. The Salt of the Earth expertly provoked audiences into desperately wanting to see the Dynamite Diamond ring holder get beaten from pillar to post by the best in the world, via scathing promos and cowardly displays in between the ropes. But in true top-of-the-pile fashion, the 25-year-old then stunningly manipulated those watching at home into potentially sympathizing with the one-time Punk diehard in an origin story speech for the ages. Of course, this vulnerable moment revealed itself to be a trap of sorts in the end, but another vital layer had been laced into a character while simultaneously tricking your favorite hero and perhaps even yourself into thinking he could be better. All this, of course, led to the long-awaited sight of this diabolical manipulator being dealt the punishments he deserved in a dog-collar spectacle, highlighting how the egotistical pillar also sits above the rest of the field when it comes to cathartic ass-whoopings too. Oh yeah, and did we mention he's only 25? Madness.